Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Unique Professions. They say weddings are a time of joy, love, compassion, and it is a time where you celebrate your beloved one, your soulmate. Here today is Candice Bydder, a wedding celebrant. Hello.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No worries. Now, Candice, tell me, I know you're a former journalist.
I am.
And you did that for a number of years.
Yeah, about 10 years.
Yep. How did you come from that world into becoming a wedding celebrant? Where did that start?
Funnily enough, there's a lot of crossover in the skills. So, it's some celebrants talk about storytelling on a wedding day, and I don't really like to refer to it as storytelling because it feels like a couple would be, characters in a book, and it's so much more nuanced than that. But interviewing people, asking people questions and teasing out interesting bits about themselves that maybe they hadn't come to certain realizations about themselves and trying to bring them that on the wedding day. So teasing out tidbits and making it relevant is something that I did as a journalist and I'm doing as a celebrant now. But the journey from that, well, I had this about 9 or 10 years into my journalism career. And I loved being a journalist. But I became very conscious that it skewed very heavily towards negative news. And people love to watch a train wreck.
Yep.
People can't resist hearing about the negative things in the world. It's just human nature. And I felt that I wasn't achieving that sort of light and shade balance that is what attracted me to journalism in the first place. Part of me wanted to just bury my head in the sand and realise that the world was a nice place. After all, I was like, what is the polar opposite of peddling misery into the world every day? Okay, weddings. People are usually happy at a wedding, and if they're not, well, maybe I can help them through that too. So I was, I could use a lot of the same skills. It's interacting with people, it's using sound equipment, it's preparing and presenting content, but less of a starring role, which suits me better, I think. It's definitely a supporting role. I've never been a queen bee. I've always been a worker bee.
Yeah.
So I like to assist people on what is one of the happiest days of their lives. I don't like to say it's the happiest day of their life because it sounds like the rest of their life will be rubbish. But it was 7.5 years ago and I haven't looked back. I've been so absolutely chuffed. I tend to have a bit of a burnout period after 4 or 5 years in a career where I just want to do something different or achieve something more. And 7.5 years now and I'm not feeling that at all. Still feel very satisfied. Working for yourself is a very different thing too. I like to say that my boss is the hardest boss I've ever worked for because I am my own boss. But it's great having flexibility around, so many different aspects of my life. But now that I'm a mum as well, I can pick and choose the hours I work to some extent and really try and be as present as I can for my family. So I have a lot better of a work-life balance, even though I'm technically working more hours than I ever have.
Yeah. Now, when you first started as a wedding celebrant, how did you go about the process of becoming one?
Okay, so to become a marriage celebrant, there is a defined process.
Yep.
You have to complete a certificate in celebrancy from a registered training organisation. But even then, completing that certificate is not a guarantee that you can be a celebrant. So for marriages, you must be qualified, but for funerals or for other types of life celebrations, you don't necessarily need to have a qualification or need to be registered with the government.
I wonder what that is.
Because the funeral aspect of things, the celebrant doesn't take on any of the legal responsibilities. That lies with the funeral director. And then things like name givings or divorce celebrations. There are all sorts of different celebrations that people have. There's no legal aspect to it. Whereas for marriages, there is a very important legal aspect to processing and registering that marriage in conjunction with the authorities. So you must be registered by the government for that. So after you complete your course, you write a very nice application to the federal government and you say, pretty please, in formal language. May I please be considered for a commission as a marriage celebrant? And it can take a few months to come through. So they're doing background checks on you. They're reviewing your references that you provide. They favour people who, bring more to the table. So if you have, a good history of community service, that plays in your favour. If you speak another language or if you have some experience, direct personal experience with another culture, then that helps a lot. And if there are not too many celebrants in your postcode, that helps a lot. So, if you're based regionally or remotely, it's about improving access to marriage services for people. If you live with a disability and you want to work with in the marriage space, that's a wonderful opportunity for folks, especially if you have knowledge of Auslan or can assist people with visual impairments, that kind of thing. So there are lots of different things that they consider before appointing you as a celebrant, though most people, if you're a fit and proper person with a pretty squeaky clean record, your chances are pretty good of jumping on board. And then once you get your commission through, go for gold.
Do you remember the first wedding that you ever did?
Yes, I do. Zoe and Ron.
Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so it was at in the Swan Valley, which is a place here in Perth where a lot of our weddings take place. It's beautiful. It's a wine country, about 40 minutes from the CBD, depending on how the traffic is, give or take. Lovely couple. They had kids. I don't believe they're together anymore, but they've since found happiness in other places. That's just, fact of life, isn't it?
It is.
But I remember sitting in their lounge room meeting them for the first time, and, I dressed up really nicely, like business-like, because I didn't know what to do, really. Yep. I was like, I'll approach it like a journalist, like asking for an interview, I suppose. And they were so, fun and casual, and their kids were, running around, really nice, just genuine, modest family. And I was like, I'd really like to be your celebrant if you'll have me after I explain the process. And she's like, yeah, cool. What do we do now? And I'm like, oh, really? Thank you. This is like an honour, truly, as cliche as that might sound. And then from there, it just built and it snowballed. And I remember, presenting that first wedding and feeling really good off the back of it. But I also remember from my TV days that the first one is not the one you worry about. It's the second one. So your first presentation, you are full of adrenaline, you're full of joy, you probably kill the first one, and then the second one is when you may, if you allow yourself to be, get complacent. So I think I put a little bit more pressure on myself for the second wedding that I did. I was a bit more nervous about the second one because of that internal reputation that I'd given it for myself. But from there, it's all been really good. Like anything, you have days where you walk away and you go, I did a really great job. And there'll be days where you walk away and say, it wasn't my best one today. I just wasn't in the right mindset, or just my words didn't flow the same way. And it's always pressure that we put on ourselves. But I always try, at least, to deliver the very best that I can on any given day.
Yeah. Now, I also know that you've won a couple of awards.
Yes. I was most recently in the Gold Coast for the Australian Wedding Awards, where I won the top gong for the nation, which was cool. So that's the second year in a row. I don't like my chances of a three-peat.
I was what about the hat trick?
I wouldn't put money on me for it. I was really not expecting the second one, to be honest, but it's a very cool and excited feeling. I posted a video of me winning it onto my Instagram and Facebook feeds, and looking back at it, I look like I'm about to have a heart attack.
Yeah, I have seen the video.
I'm very pale. I'm very pale. I went over there was 27, I think, in the category. I said to myself, because Perth is where we're based, and Perth is a long way from the Gold Coast, and I've got two little children who are 4 and 6 who'd never been on a plane before, so they came with me with my husband, and I think it's a long way to go and a lot of money to spend to get top 25. As ungrateful as it sounds, I was like, if I get top 10, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
So when they announced the contenders for top 25, I was like, okay, cool. I'm not in that.
Yep.
So I must be top 10, so I was really happy from that. And then they announced, top 5, and I wasn't in that. I was like, oh, okay. And then they announced highly commended. I was like, oh, they've either forgotten about me or I've got it.
Yeah.
And I was really, truly 50-50 at the moment. I was like, oh, what if they literally just forgot me?
Yeah.
What if I didn't qualify at all? And then they announced my name, and I swear, I would just, the well went blank for a moment. Yeah, I was on a table with a whole bunch of people from Western Australia, and we all did insanely well. But I think that WA, we're quite a humble little industry, and we all know each other. All of us here in Perth all seem to know each other or seem to be connected to each other in some way. And that has a benefit when it comes to the wedding industry because we all know how each other works. We can all recommend each other. We all know who shows up and who does good work. And the people who don't perform get weeded out pretty quickly, especially post-COVID. A lot of people entered the wedding industry during and post-COVID as almost a side gig type situation because the market has been saturated with celebrants, DJs, photographers, you know, some hobbyists and some professionals and some hobbyists who are very talented and have since become professionals. But it also has made the quality of everything so much better because it's more competitive. And especially here in Western Australia, I found. So knowing that Western Australia has done consistently very well in these national awards for the past 2 years it's a green flag for the health of our industry over here.
What makes you top notch? What do you do that everyone else doesn't that makes you the award winning?
I don't necessarily think I'm the best. Okay. I think there are people who are better than me, absolutely. I can say that. But I do think that my customer service is better than most. When people write to me, I write back very quickly to the point where it's sometimes scary. You know, I'm very dedicated in the amount of time and service that I give to people. For me, this is not just a job. And I say this to couples when, you know, bringing them on board. I know this is one of the most important days of your life. And excuse me for being so blunt, I'm going to damn well act like it. Right? You know, just because this is my, 5 to 7 days a week job, it doesn't mean that I don't care. Because I care deeply about this and I want this to be right for you. I think what I bring to the table is it takes quite a lot to rattle me. And because I've done quite a lot of weddings, there aren't many scenarios that I haven't faced. So for these people who are experiencing for what for most is a once-in-a-lifetime event, any little hiccup in the road can be very jarring. But for me, I'm like, oh yeah, that happened last week. Let me handle it. It's okay. So I can bring a sense of calm to what can be quite a hectic process. Do I think I'm the best writer? I think I'm a great writer, but there are people who are more talented than me. Am I the funniest person out there? Absolutely not. You can ask my kids. I'm absolutely not funny, according to them. And they have a very low bar for humour too, so there's that. I'm entertaining, but weddings aren't always about entertainment. For me, it's about authenticity and finding beauty in the simplicity, because what is more simple at its core than love? It's universal. So I try and bring those themes into people's weddings.
Now, you were saying just a bit before COVID, kind of the wedding industry went right up there. How did you
famine to feast?
How did you manage that COVID buffer?
Oh, it was a brutal time. I had a baby the day the pandemic started.
Awesome timing.
It was. She caused it, bless her. It was a very tricky time for a lot of people. When I was first sussing out, becoming a celebrant, I sat down and I worked out what my values were as a person and as a business. And one of the guiding principles of what I've done from the beginning is I will not make money out of misery. So that's why I don't do funerals. I do think funeral celebrants deserve to be paid and paid well and paid better than they are currently. But I just can't reconcile that within myself to make money from someone's funeral. So that's personally why I don't offer that service. And COVID really challenged that because I still had to feed my family and keep the lights on in my house. But when you've got people saying, look, I need to postpone my wedding because of this pandemic, I couldn't charge them any extra. And in many cases, if they wanted a refund, I was refunding them. Even though my terms and conditions said that I didn't have to. People remember how you treat them in their time of need. And as much as I was hemorrhaging money at certain points during COVID, every single person that I treated well in that time, and I like to think that's everybody, they either wrote me a really nice review, or they ended up coming back to me when they're ready to get married, or they recommended me to their friends, or just really shared their goodwill. So, they'll continue to like my page or, like my posts or put nice comments out, or if I bump into them in the shops, they've got a smile and a hello for me. I think that, and I slept soundly at night, knowing that I hadn't made anyone's life worse during what is already a very tricky period. So I've continued that policy from day dot through to today, even if it means that sometimes I take a financial hit for it. I think that's an important guiding principle for me. So COVID was very difficult. I found that 2022, 2023 were very busy years because we were playing catch up from all of the postponements. But it was also very hard financially because, I wasn't charging any extra. A lot of these people had already paid for their weddings in full at my 2020, 2021 pricing.
Yep.
There were days where I was doing, or weeks where I was doing, say, 4 or 5 weddings in a week, but not actually bringing home any money because the money was already in the bank, not any extra money. But that's one of the ways I structure my business too, is that when someone pays me, I don't release the money to myself until the job is done.
Yep.
So if they do need a refund for any reason, I have the money available to give it to them. So I don't actually have it until I've completed the work. So I think that helped a lot in the sustainability of my business.
And of course, your website is celebrationsbycandice.com.au. Also on Instagram and Facebook.
Everywhere we can find good people.
Everywhere, yeah. Everywhere, anywhere. Now, what makes, in your opinion, a good wedding celebrant? What are some of the key aspects?
I think you should be able to communicate well. I don't think that means you have to have the nicest, most silky smooth voice on the planet, but you need to be able to communicate well for the people that you want to communicate with. So every celebrant has a different niche or a different talent, and some are still finding what that niche or talent is. I know some celebrants that really do very well with giant, big 300 people weddings.
Yep.
They're very entertaining and they can really wrangle a crowd like that. Whereas my strength is in small weddings. Smaller the better for me, really, because I'm a very conversational type celebrant. I like to really tap into the reason why that we're here, even if people can't enunciate or find the right words for that themselves. I like to find those words for them. The best compliment I get from a wedding afterwards is when one of the guests comes up to me and says, "Hey, how do you know this couple?"
Yep.
Well, they paid my bill.
Yep.
But I love to give the impression that we're close and that we're warm and that we're friendly. I think being a good celebrant is about reading the room. It's about having empathy for people, but first and foremost, it's about serving the couple and knowing that the couple are people who are, one, paying your bill at the end of the day, but they're the reason for the celebration. I think a lot of folks, wedding adjacent people and guests, get really focused on, obligation when it comes to weddings. You don't have to invite everyone if you don't want to. If it pleases you to please others, then go ahead. You don't have to do things just because other people think that's what should be done. You don't have to have this location because that is where generations of your family have got married. You don't have to have a 300 people wedding just because that has what has been done. Or you don't have to elope just because it's cool to do that right now. It's about serving yourself. I think it's one of these few times in your life where you can be selfish, and I think a good celebrant will empower you in your decision making and potentially offer you a buffer between other people who are causing drama for you. So I like to feed lines to people.
Yeah.
So, if you've got a trouble with, an in-law or with another vendor, here's how I would handle that.
And just going back on that, you were saying about elopements.
Yeah.
And I've read on your website, you've openly discussed that's your favourite thing to do.
It's my favourite thing to do. I've been doing them since before they were cool.
Yeah. Why is that? What from your perspective, why are they your favourite?
Well, I eloped myself.
Yep.
So I feel, selfishly, I relive a little bit of my wedding day when someone elopes. A true elopement where it's really just the couple or just the couple and a handful of people. But I find that the focus is truly on the why and why we're there and getting married to the person that you love and making this highest commitment that our society allows. It's a beautiful thing. How often do we get the opportunity to speak so freely? You have people in your life that you love. I have people in my life that I love. But do I take the time to sit there and look them in the eyes and say, you know what? You are really great, and I am so excited to be doing this with you. And I want to continue doing this with you for as long as you and I are cool with it. We just don't take that time very often. And I think that's the beauty of an elopement is, you're just talking to each other. As much or as little as you want. Speaking verbally and non-verbally. And saying all of these things that we mean to say and do that we just don't take the opportunity to do. I think that's the beautiful thing about an elopement.
Excellent. Now, when you are conducting a ceremony, you've touched on this before about writing something for the couple. What is that process for you?
It's the hardest part. When people ask me that question, I say it's like a jigsaw puzzle, but I don't know what the picture is. So as part of this process, I'm taking a lot of notes when I'm with a couple. I'm also sending them a questionnaire and asking for their input on different aspects, different possibilities, different things about themselves to try and tease out these different elements which form the jigsaw puzzle pieces. Once I've got this, I've got a pile of jigsaw puzzle pieces in front of me. I've got to make sense of them. So I'm starting with, what's the first thing you do when you do a jigsaw puzzle?
Corners.
The corners, right? You start with the corners, and that's the legal stuff.
Yeah.
So there are certain legal things for a civil ceremony that we must say that there's no flexibility around. It has to be done. So that's the first thing I'm putting in. And that would include things like the people's legal names and my name. And, the what we call the monotum, which is a certain set of lines that we must say that defines marriage according to the law. What they're agreeing to, because at the end of the day, it's a legal contract that they're entering into just in front of way more people than usual.
Yeah.
And then from there, I base a structure. So as part of my questionnaire, I ask a series of yes-no questions. Would you like to give each other a ring? Yes. Okay, I'll build a ring exchange in there. Would you like to say I do vows to each other? Yes. Okay, which ones? Okay, you can build that in. So from there, that's like the edges of the jigsaw puzzle. And then really it's getting to the guts. And that is different for everybody. For some people, for some couples, I might get their jigsaw puzzle pieces months in advance. And I might wake up one day and go, wow, I'm just really feeling this couple today. And I might have their ceremony written within a few hours, even though their wedding's not
3 months away.
6 months away even sometimes. And then for others, it just doesn't come as easily. So I try and give myself as much lead time as possible. I like to work a month in advance. I like to have all my ceremonies at least written. I like to have certificates printed, literally packed and good to go a month in advance if I can. And I build in my scheduling in my year. So I deliberately try and have a quiet January and a quiet July. That's when my kids' birthdays are. It's usually school holidays as well, so I can be hanging around. But I try and focus a lot of my writing and catch up around those 2 months. So just before wedding season here in Perth kicks off, I like to play catch up so that I can, in case of emergency, this is part of my emergency planning. If a couple wakes up and says, you know what, something terrible has happened or something amazing has happened, we want to get married tomorrow, I'm like, yep, no problem. Grab and go.
Yep.
I've got it ready to rumble. Which, during COVID saved my bacon
Yep.
a lot. So once I have the ceremony written, and sometimes I do come back to it. Very often I come back to it because I'm always trying new things. Some things work, some things don't. I've got one of these people that wakes up at 3 a.m. and just goes, whoa, okay, I've got an idea and I need to write it down.
Yep.
And if my laptop's the closest thing, well, I'm opening that laptop
Yep.
and I'm writing it in there. But really, once I have a script that I'm happy with, one thing that I do a little bit differently is that I don't rehearse it. A lot of people rehearse it. Because my style is quite conversational and because my training is in sight reading.
Yep.
So I do voiceover work on the side, which a lot of it's sight reading, and news reading, which is sight reading from an auto cue. I like to just read it fresh on the day, and that way I get natural inflections in my voice. So it feels like I'm just having a conversation with you, even though I'm reading a script.
With the, I think you call it
Monotum?
Monotums, yeah, that's right. Can you actually give us an example of one right now?
Oh, the monotum is the monotum. My
Yeah.
name is Candice Bydder. I'm an authorised marriage celebrant, legally registered to solemnise this marriage according to the law in Australia. Now, before you are joined in marriage in my presence and in the presence of these witnesses, I am to remind you of the solemn and binding nature of the commitment into which you are now about to enter. Marriage, according to the law in Australia, is the union of two people, to the exclusion of all others, voluntarily entered into for life. And then usually I'll lighten the mood, because that's quite dry.
Yeah.
That must be said at every wedding.
Yep.
Something along very
Something
similar.
along those lines,
There's very little flexibility in what we can change around there.
Yep.
But after that, to lighten the mood, I'll often ask, does that sound okay to you?
Yep.
To just sort of bring us back.
Pretty.
But it's also then a statement of consent.
It is.
So one of the really important things about marriage in Australia is that arranged marriages are fine. You don't have to know the person that you're marrying, but you have to consent to it. So consent being a hugely important part. So me asking that question even lightly covers two grounds. One, it establishes consent. Two, well, really three things. Two, it lightens the mood. And three, it gets them into work mode, the couple. So a lot of the ceremony to that point, they probably would have gone over their head.
Yeah.
Because it's such a whirlwind of a day.
Yep.
But before I hold a microphone in their faces, if I'm addressing them directly as much as I can in the ceremony up until that point, like often all the time in the ceremony up until that point, before I stick a microphone in their face, they're going, okay, I'm not jolted anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not jolted by having to speak straight away because I've already used my mouth
Yep.
when things are feeling so awkward and strange and a little bit nervous.
So how do you calm those nerves? Because I'm sure a lot of couples, standing there going,
Yeah.
and they are very nervous. How do you kind of relieve that for the couples, whether it be the groom or the bride?
Great question. So for 10 years as a journalist, I stuck microphones in front of people that didn't want them there.
Mm.
So that's where another skill came across,
Yep.
right? So a lot of people are scared of public speaking, and rightly so,
Yep.
right? I'm the weird one, not being afraid of it. Then I say to them, look, I'm going to try and stand off to the side and just be holding the microphone as discreetly as possible. You just talk to your partner. You repeat words after me, I say them softly, or I put them on cards for you, so you just read the words from a card, if that's what you want to do. If people are really nervous, I say, let's keep the speaking to a minimum, right? Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Don't go over the top. If people in the moment really get the jitters and they cannot, one of the options I have is to take the microphone away, depending on which part of the ceremony it is, and you can just speak to your partner quite freely. That helps a lot of couples.
Yeah.
Or, alternatively, I face them away from the crowd and face them towards me.
Yep.
So they're not looking at the crowd. They can still be heard by the crowd on the microphone, but they don't have the feeling of everyone
everyone
staring
going,
at them.
watching you going, oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Another thing that can be done is we can do the legal aspects or the speaking aspects separately.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some very strict rules around what can and can't be done, but there are some circumstances where we can do that, as long as the rest of the crowd knows what's up. Or, if it's their personal vows and they're written on a card, I have this out that I offer every single couple. If your body just does not play ball and you're reading your personal vows, your personal expression of love to your partner, and you're just, your brain to your mouth connection is just not working and you don't want to continue, hand me the card.
Yeah.
And I'll say, something like, David, your person's looking too spiffy today, you're lost for words, here's what you want to say. Yeah. And everyone will go, ha ha ha, and then I'll just read the words as though I'm you.
Yep.
And that's happened a few times. But sometimes just knowing that you have a planned exit is enough to allow you to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got the option of continuing or not, you've got an exit strategy, sometimes that's enough to allow you to continue. So really, I've done coming up to 670 weddings, and that's only happened a handful of times.
Yeah.
Even with people, I work very often with people with severe social anxiety, and a lot of those folks choose to elope for reasons. But when they do choose to have bigger weddings, they've still managed to get through because we've conditioned them to it and made it their choice.
And probably practice as well.
If they want to.
Yep.
Sometimes over-practicing has the opposite effect.
Okay.
And I'll say, well, you know your body. If you're getting to this point where anything is moving, stress is normal, distress is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
At any point, if I sense you being in distress, I will not let you get married.
Yeah.
If it means that we do some calm breathing, some mindfulness before you walk down the aisle or before you enter your ceremony space, that's what we're doing. If you're running late, I don't care. I'm not letting you walk in until I know that you're in a good mental space. People will wait 5 minutes for you. If they don't, then what are they doing at your wedding?
Yeah.
Right. Your photographer, I can make up time extra during other parts of the ceremony so that we're not throwing out your photography timelines too much. But no one benefits from someone being distressed on a wedding day. No one benefits. I don't want you remembering your wedding day because you felt awful.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to remember that you had a really tricky moment at the beginning there and then everything was okay. And then it was great.
Yeah.
That's my job.
Mm-hmm. After the ceremony, after the I do's, what is your role after that? What do you...
Right. So sometimes people will ask me to stay on an MC, but not usually. It's not something that I really pitch very hard as something to do. I think often people have a family member or someone who can step in and help with the celebration. This is the line I use. I'm not in a hurry to leave. I always schedule myself very loosely. But I stay until it's weird that I'm still there. And it gets to this very defined point. Often after the ceremony, I've signed the paperwork, I've triple-checked the paperwork. That's the first thing that I do. I usually join the end of the congratulations queue, if there is one, and present the couple with their marriage certificate and say, all right, I'll be in touch. Often the photographer doesn't want me to play music after the ceremony because they're usually giving instructions for people about who's to gather for portraits.
Yeah.
And they don't need to battle music. Or occasionally I'll keep the microphone active if there are some instructions to give. But really, once it becomes very clear that I'm no longer needed, once the portraits are happening, the photos, I'll just gently pack down and gallop off into the sunset. And then I go back home and do all the behind-the-scenes stuff. So that is uploading the marriage documents to the Registry of Births, Deaths and Marriages. That is, closing out the files, so making sure that all of the information has been given with regards to ordering the registration marriage certificate. If name change information is necessary for a couple, I'll make sure that that's primed and ready to go. And, I'll also ask them, are you happy? What can I do better? Because it's a difficult question to ask, and sometimes it's a difficult answer to hear. But if you're not asking for that feedback in any aspect of your life or your business, like, how are you to grow?
Yeah.
If you just got people saying, wow, you're amazing all the time. No one is amazing all the time, and there's always ways to improve. If you're not growing, you're stagnating. So I feel very, very, very passionately about self-improvement.
Excellent. And everyone needs to improve, We all have.
All of us. Every single one of us.
Yep. Okay. When on your website you've got some various vendors.
Yes.
That you photographers.
Yeah.
I'm thinking flower. I think
florists.
Yep.
We've got makeup artists, videographers, you name it. Preferred venues. These are just places and people that I do almost a little happy dance when I see a booking come through and I know that they're part of the team.
Yep.
Because we just align very well together. We have same values. There's, I would say, probably 5 or 6 photographers that I just go, yes, awesome, right? All very distinctly different styles and very different kinds of people. But I know that it's going to be a good day. And I know how they move. I know what elements of the ceremony they are very good at capturing, so I'll try and lean into their strengths where I can. And I'll also, try and accommodate their preferences. So there's some photographers that I know do their best work where if I'm standing in a certain position. So, with the blessing of the couple and with a full open explanation, I'll say, hey, look, so-and-so, we've done this several times before and this really works very well. It might seem odd, but if you're happy to trust the process and let the creative people be the creative people, I don't think you're going to regret it. And 9 times out of 10, the couple will be like, yeah, look, we pay you for your expertise. Exactly, Can you please just do your best work? That would be great. But if anyone has a strong preference, well, of course, they get what they want. But I'm always happy to work with anyone, but, we find that we cross paths more often than not. That's a delightful thing.
And I was wondering, with those services, how did you build up that network and that trust between them?
It was very organic. Very organic. It's purely just seeing each other at gigs.
Yep.
Or at weddings or different events, and just feeling quite aligned. We serve the same kinds of couples with the same value set who are often in the same phase of life, or are looking for the same kind of service. Often we're very similar personality-wise. I like to align myself with people who are, calming energy, because I think there's enough tension and excitement around a wedding that doesn't need to be amplified, especially with elopements. I like to keep the energy quite even. Still exciting, but I'm here to reassure you and offer you certainty that this is the right and great thing to do, that you're making a smart and good decision.
Good choice to marry this person.
Yeah, it's not about, jumping on a bouncy castle and adding fireworks to what is already an exciting day. It doesn't need embellishment. It needs, reassurance and certainty. And I find a lot of the vendors that I work with just have that same kind of mindset. They just want to serve the couple, and they all have very, very good customer service. Even, there are certain photographers that I would say are way more, technically proficient or creatively talented than some others. But they don't always have the best customer service. Or they might not always be the most reliable people. So I always make sure that when I'm giving a recommendation, it's someone who's going to make me look good at the end of the day, and vice versa. I want to make them look good.
Exactly.
Because if I recommend somebody or somewhere and they get a less than stellar experience, that reflects on me.
Exactly. Your reputation's on the line as well.
Spot on.
Yeah.
So it's very much a mutual relationship. I have had people in the past like cold call me, I suppose, and say, hey, can you feature me on your website? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Not like, do you want to catch up first? Like,
yeah.
Let's work together a few times, and all the recommendations I have are genuine recommendations based on personal experience, and that's the way I like to keep it.
Does each preparation for each service, is it different?
Very.
Or do you...
I try to keep my preparations minimal because I like things to be natural on the day, and that's just me. There are other people who, I know there are several celebrants out there who also work as like stand-up comedians, and that's the kind of energy that they bring.
Yeah.
So their style of ceremony would require a lot more rehearsing. I like to, even when I'm having an actual rehearsal with a couple, I don't go through every single word that I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I'll walk through it, step through it for their benefit, not for mine. I like to go with the flow on the day because I like things to feel organic and natural. Yeah. Because, love is a natural thing. So I try and keep my preparations to a minimum. Where I focus my energies with preparation is on the legal side of things. Yeah. So all of the paperwork is like checked, double-checked, triple-checked, quadruple-checked. And I also have very thorough emergency and backup procedures for every single couple. I have a plan in place just in case something happens to me, or something happens to the venue, or something happens to one of my children, touch wood, and I need to be with my children. And it would have to be something quite dramatic.
Yeah.
I've only ever missed 2 weddings, and that was when I was in COVID isolation. And it was horrible, and I cried. But both couples were fine.
Yeah.
I had backup celebrants that were good, in fact, better than good, excellent, probably better than me celebrants, to be honest. I pay them if we haven't come to some other arrangement privately, because I'm friends with celebrants, right? I back them up, they back me up.
Exactly.
Life happens.
It's the way the world works.
It's the way the world works, you're right. And literally have an encrypted zip file with all of the legal documents and the script in it, and I choose a celebrant who I know will deliver my script in the way that it's intended. And if time allows, I give the couple the choice of a few celebrants so that they can interview and get advice. I think emergency planning is something that a lot of celebrants don't take as seriously as they should.
Yep.
A lot of wedding vendors don't take as seriously as they should because anything can happen to us at any time. I've got a black doomsday folder at home, in the horrific thought that something quite life-altering should happen to me. There's a plan. There is a plan so that weddings can legally still go ahead.
Yeah. And like you were saying before, the whole wedding industry, during COVID, pretty much shut down. Shut down. Yeah. Because, the whole, pretty much everything.
Even in WA, where we were comparatively better off, it's still... I think in New South Wales, I think it was New South Wales, probably Victoria as well, I would say, weddings literally couldn't go ahead. And, in WA, we could always still have a wedding of only 5 people.
Yeah.
We always had that luxury. But I think it was for the first time in Australian history in New South Wales, the COVID restrictions were so that weddings legally could not go ahead. And that was just such an incredible state of affairs for those few weeks or months that happened. I know that our eastern states colleagues suffered way greater than we did.
Yeah, I was going to say that, from your experience, do you know of any vendors, not just celebrants, but like wedding venues, photographers that kind of that killed them completely?
Yeah, it killed a big chunk of the industry. Yeah. There were some that were just so mentally worn out after it all that they moved into different areas. I think that happened with people in their careers in general. Yeah. It really showed people what they were willing to stand for and what they weren't. So adding that extra pressure to yourself is sometimes the necessary thing. But it made a lot of people too. It strengthened and boosted a lot of businesses in that all of a sudden we had to focus on our sustainability. So I, during COVID, streamlined my website. I automated a lot of my admin processes so that I had more time to focus on customer service and implemented a lot of technology that all of a sudden became the norm. So prior to one little thing, prior to COVID, offering couples a video chat instead of an in-person meeting. Yep. A lot of people didn't want to do that. I always offered in-person meetings, but I always offered video chats too because I'm a time-poor person and so are a lot of the couples I serve. But during COVID and since, a lot of people are choosing video chats as a first choice because they can wear their tracky dacks. Their kids can be running cuts in the background.
Yep.
You've got a bit more flexibility with time because, 7:30 at night, you don't need to travel home.
Exactly.
After that, there's less small talk and more just getting straight to business. And you can still get, not quite the same, but still get a vibe check, especially in those early days. Yeah, okay, this is a person who presents themselves well. And for me, it's, okay, this couple are serious about getting married. This isn't a last-minute flip-flop decision for them, which is important for me too. I want to make sure that I'm serving people that I can serve well. So I think that was one of the big things that came out of COVID, but I did notice that a lot of businesses struggled and many folded. Some, and this is going to sound a bit brutal, for some that was the right move. It weeded out a lot of the people whose hearts weren't in it. If people, I've said this a lot to couples, anyone who has survived post-COVID is a good sustainable business.
Yeah.
And that's a big green flag in my book, that they're still operating, especially if they're operating with the same passion or more passion than before, because we don't take anything for granted anymore. Overall, it has strengthened the industry at this point.
Okay, I've got a couple of final questions.
Go for it.
In, let's say, 4 or 5 years' time, how would you like your service to grow?
Oh, this is actually something that I've been thinking about recently, and I don't have an actual answer for it because I'm always looking for what's next and what's ahead. And for the first time in my career, I'm not really sure what the next step is. I don't believe in making money out of the labour of others. I don't know, it's a dumb thing. It's kind of like making money out of misery. I don't want to make money out of other people's labour. I think people should receive the full fruits of their labour. So that it really limits any potential for growth or expansion of my business. It's a banal answer, but I just want to continue with business as usual. I just want to be working under the fruits of my own labour. Will I be a millionaire? Absolutely not. But will I hopefully continue to serve people? I don't think it's a bad thing to just want to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's not an ambitious answer, and it's probably not a motivating answer, but I'm content.
Yeah.
And if I can just still be content in 5 years, I think that's an admirable thing in its own way.
Yeah, because when people ask me that question and things like that, I'm like, well, I'm kind of quite happy where I am now, and if that continues, well, so be it.
I think I would.
So be it,
I would still be the lucky one if people were choosing me. Right? It's not about what I choose to do. If people continue to choose me in 5 years' time, I will be so grateful for that. I mean that. People don't have to choose me.
Yeah.
There's loads of great people out there. Every time that, this is going to sound a bit emosh, every time that someone says, hey, can you be our celebrant? I'm like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's not just about, adding to the business balance spreadsheet. It's like, wow, you inviting me to your wedding. Thank you. It's very cool.
Okay, now, how have you evolved from your start to right now? How have you, as a celebrant personally, and how has your business evolved?
I'm much more streamlined than I was. So
Yeah,
rather than having to, type every invoice out, it's all automated nicely now. So from the administration and the accounting side of things, it's all, and the legal side of things, it's a lot more streamlined. I think I'm a lot more thoughtful in the couples that I serve. So at the beginning, I didn't really have the luxury of picking and choosing who I work with. It sounds a bit up yourself, but when you need money, you accept any kind of clientele that comes through. And there was
then you kind of weed it.
Oh, sure. In the early days, there was some weddings where I felt, I think they would have been better served with a different celebrant. You're not supposed to play favourites, but I definitely have some couples that just really stick with me. That are definitely my favourites. I see them have their babies, or I see them travel the world, or adopt their dogs, or buy a new piece of land, and I'm like, yes, I'm so excited for you, just cheerleading them from afar. I think that's the biggest thing. Now that I'm 7.5 years in, I have the luxury of being a bit more choosy with the jobs that I can take on, and I feel that my branding values are communicated a lot better, so that I'm attracting more of the people that I like to serve and that I can serve well. And I hope that that'll continue to evolve. But I don't always expect that the types of people that I will serve will stay the same. you know, and then I might develop my own interests or develop a skill set in a different area, and I might gravitate towards one way or another, and that's normal. Or, you know, a trend might come in and make someone like me as a celebrant deeply uncool. I'm very prepared for that possibility. But I think that's the, you know, I've always been quite aware of where the market is going, and I hope that I can continue that, because that will keep my business strong as, you know, a money-making venture, but also keep me interested as a human being in my business.
Well, Candice, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to hearing all of your wonderful interviews.
Thank you very much.